Hello, my name is Phoenix Core, and this is a video on my art piece that I did for Jazz's month of the challenge of the month for um, May, which is called Level Cap, and I'm gonna explain the process that I went through, like my process that I went through as I worked on this piece. So without further ado, let me get into it. So this is essentially my piece right here. It's Link, basically, where I kind of came up with the story idea that Hyrule's facing a threat that is uh, extremely powerful, and the only way to actually beat it, Link is given basically the complete power of the Triforce and the three gifts from each of the goddesses. The Sword of Power, which is uh, what you see, what he's holding here, which is a modified version of the Master Sword, and just kind of making it a little bit more designed, a little bit more epic in a way, as well as uh, the Shield of Wisdom from Nehru, which is basically the Hylian shield, but again with variations, color differences, and stuff like that, as well as the armor of Furor, which again, just nothing too major. I mean, you got to start from somewhere at the beginning and then just make it bigger, more grand, as you would. So, essentially, how like what I started with, and uh, to get going, is I essentially, I started with original sketch like this, something very simple, and after a while I began like sculpting it out, as you can see right here. uh, so like I essentially sculpted it out to where it's slightly cleaner and much more detailed to see what I'm actually doing and everything. But this isn't like the final process of it. And then after that, once I finished with that, I essentially would turn this layer here, like a light, like it. Well, I initially drew this in like a kind of a grayish blue, and then inked over it with one of my inking brush, and ended up with this. Then afterwards, once I was done with that, and this is something that I normally do a lot and everything, I set up all of the base colors, which is very much, just like the colors of where I'm going to have anything in a very flat setup, using the same brush that I am going to be using to do all the texturing and the rendering. The reason why is I do that is so that way it creates like a certain feel in my pieces that I enjoy. So I tend to kind of keep the same brush. Then after I get that and I have all of the base colors, it looks like one of my base colors is not there. Oh no, it's there. I just didn't. I'll explain why this is white in a minute. Essentially, like whenever I did it, I painted over my base, and so it got moved into my renders, but I haven't done that yet. So afterwards, once I do that, I essentially draw in. I drew in. Is this it? Yeah, this is it. I drew in this background here, which is what I like to call the midground, and I think a lot of people actually call it that. Basically, the midground was that kind of ruins, and it went through several different iterations, but this is the one that I ended up keeping. I don't have the other ones because it was taking up space. And then after that, no, that's that. No, here it is. Okay, after I finished drawing it out, I essentially went and inked it and got that done, and then I drew the background, which is here. Which you get to see like the castle in the background, and this area up here is where I was gonna essentially have that big plume of smoke that you see in the background, along with the mountains and things like that. And then of course I inked that, so we ended up getting this, but I even took it a little bit further whenever I did it later and erased some of my inks whenever I actually had the clouds and everything up on the castle. So this is essentially what it ended up with. As you can see, like, the castle is kind of gone. I kind of got rid of some of the inks, and you'll see why in a minute. So yeah, and the next thing I did after that was I did the backgrounds, and kind of did them in parts. I did the mid ground first, and then I did the background. So oh, no, I'm sorry. I did the background first. So the next thing that I kind of did was I drew to do the sky. I drew these like arcing lines that essentially go in like a pattern, like so, like from starting from this area here, going up and over, and I kept doing that with 3 separate different colors. And then after that, I kind of used a hue and kind of went from yellow down here to a bit of orange up here, and a bit of red, and then red up here, and kind of like a gradient to go up, and it gives it this really nice texture that I like for the sky and stuff. And I'm not entirely sure like what I was thinking in my head when I did that, but yeah, it turned out nice and I like it. But the thing is, like, I didn't necessarily like the color of it. So because I was originally gonna have this like kind of like a flaming sky and everything, it was gonna be different, and I changed my mind. So I ended up doing a color overlay, making it blue, then adding a brightness so that way it made it a nice good blue sky. Then after that I did the essentially did the background, and it was kind of like I did the mid ground, and like layer by layer I had an old shadow layer that I basically, like an old dark layer that I originally had, like the mountains and stuff, that ended up changing to a more color version. They were originally going to be just like a black silhouetted with some highlights in there to kind of give it a bit depth, but I ended up changing that. So now, like, essentially had the like almost black at first color, but it was like very, very low opacity. I changed the opacity down a bit. I don't know why I did, but that's why. Yeah, I took it down to about 50 stuff. But the reason why I kept it is because when I did these, they were overlaid and stuff with that black background in mind. So when I took it away, it didn't quite look right. You were still able to see through it, and you got blue coming through. So, um, so I did the base colors for the green and that, and then I did all of the bricks and stuff. Started to throw in the renders for it and get it textured and everything, but I kept it simple. I didn't want it like so overly detailed and stuff because it's not the primary focus. So I kept the detail and everything simple whenever I threw in the bricks and I threw in the moss and the grass and got everything looking right. I kept it very, very simple, um, because I didn't want to draw the attention away from Link and onto the mid ground because that's not the primary focus. I have it set up to where the primary focus is Link, and then the secondary focus is the castle in the background, which is understandable and stuff because that's a eye catcher because the castle's burning, and like that's the part of the story as to why he's here, and like things are going down. So yeah, I did all the details and everything. Then afterwards I started doing the I did the base for all of the backgrounds, but I painted over. So I did the mountains first, which were easy enough. I had to look up some things to see how they looked in the distance and stuff, and they have always got this kind of like blue to it. And then I did the grass afterwards, and kind of gave it a bit of a forest in this area right here and stuff, because as you go up toward mountains you get into forest. If you're but yeah, and like these mountains and stuff, like this entire area and everything is essentially, I themed it after Breath of the Wild. So if you are looking at the castle in Breath of the Wild and you look off to the left, you see these massive mountains, and that's what these are. So that's why you have this like forest down here and this massive huge mountain going way up high in the background. Yeah, sorry, I'm not used to talking too much. And then like over here I had the area a bit darker because again you were gonna have that massive cloud and stuff, and if I didn't darken the area over here, it would give an illusion of it being just flat and not like over the entire area. So after that I did the clouds. I did the clouds first. So, and the reasoning for that was, so that way because when I did it and stuff, I did the clouds first because I wanted it kind of sticking in through I wanted the castle somewhat sticking in through the clouds. So I had to do that, and that's why I erased some of the ink works and stuff, so that way it gives that illusion. And whenever I did the colors, I wanted it to kind of also give that effect where part of it you could somewhat see it, but it's still going into the clouds and stuff. And if I did that beforehand, whenever I had the full castle, I would have not have gotten that effect quite right. So after that I did, what is this layer? What's that layer? It's a weird, just random layer. Anyway, after I did that, I did the tops of the castle, the green areas and stuff like that. And then I rendered then I did the main color of the castle and did all of the shadows. And again, you look at it from a distance in the full view, it's all very, very simple and minimal detail because you don't want to overdo it. And once it like is finished, like it's still something that catches your attention, but again, it's like versus Link, then the castle, and then everything else. Excuse me. But yeah, I did all that, got the background done, and then once I was done with that, then I started to render Link. So after that, I did all of Link's rendering, bit by bit and in chunks and stuff, focusing on one color at a time. So I first focused on the hair, because I absolutely love doing hair. Then I focused on the hat, all the green. Then and so on and so on, just different parts of it, and a bit at a time. Uh, and um, then after that, I essentially did a set of particles, which is basically like all these different effects, like the glowing of the sword, the lightning, the fire inside the castle, which really starts to bring it together. And then after that, I did a lot of the different lighting, which I gave the clouds and the lightning a glow. I added the glow of the fire on the smoke and the towers and stuff like that. I did the glow of the sword flame thing, whatever you want to call it, and I added a bit of glow to his eyes, because again, I'm wanting him to essentially have like the power of the complete power of the three goddesses. So he's kind of supercharged in a way. But yeah, and that's essentially like my process, and all these little things just came together. Oh yeah, and I added like a mist thing up here, a mist of clouds up here. But yeah, I'm really happy with this piece. It came out quite nice, and I actually got it done on time. So yeah, um, but yeah, that's my piece. And once I was finished, I signed it, and yeah, it's ready to go. All right. Well, um, thank you for joining me, and yeah, wish me luck. As soon as I can actually.